Hi, my name is Maggie Taylor, and this is Heart of Steamboat's Fast Forward. You might have thought that you were transported into a former math or science classroom, but today we're going to talk a little bit about the question, well, thankfully not this question on the board, but the question, can science and faith be compatible? Or another way to say it is, can you believe in God and science at the same time? The simple answer, and if you would like to turn off the video after this, is yes, but the more complicated answer is yes, because. And we're going to explore a little bit about that. Obviously, the number one question when we think about science and faith comes from the creation story and evolution. And so today we're going to read the creation story out of a children's Bible because, it's a little bit more flowery and fun out of here. And then we're going to talk a little bit about why it can be compatible with the scientific understanding of creation and evolution. We're not going to spend tons of time talking about that, though, because I think there are some bigger questions about how science and faith play a role in our lives and how they can not only be compatible, but also helpful with each other. If you want to follow along, our scripture reading or our reading for today comes from Genesis 1, chapter verses 1 through 28. In the beginning, the earth was empty. Darkness covered everything. But God was there, and God had a plan. Let there be light, God said, and suddenly golden light shone all around. God called it day. He called the darkness night. With the light and the darkness, the first day passed. On the second day, God said, let there be a great space. And a space was formed deep and high, and God called that space sky. God made rivers and seas on the third day. He formed the mountains and deserts, the islands and beaches. God planted tall trees, swaying grasses, and flowers of every color. When the fourth day came, God put lights in the sky, the fiery sun for daytime, the sparkly moon and dancing stars for night. That was the fourth day, and God said it was good. On the fifth day, God filled the water with fish of all shapes and sizes. God made the birds to glide across the sky. God made animals on the sixth day, furry and scaly animals, smooth and sleek. On that day, God made man. When God was finished, God saw everything that God had made, and he said it was very good. And on the seventh day, God rested. This is the story that I grew up with. This is actually the Bible that I grew up with, reading with my mom from every night. And I don't think that it made me any better or worse in science class when we talked about the creation of the world and evolution. One of the interesting things about this story is it was the science of the day. If you think about science and the way that it has evolved throughout just your lifetime, think about your grandparents, great-grandparents, it's come a long way. John Brooke once said that the main conflict between science and faith is a conflict between the sacred science of the past and the new science of the present. And I think that's what we see when we look at the 7-day, 24-hour creation story that we see in the Bible. And we look and compare it to the evolutionary understanding we have from science now. They're obviously vastly different, but there are some things that seem a little bit similar. Like the atmosphere was created before animals were, or that there is a separation of land masses between land and water. All of these things, in their own sort of way, follow our understanding of evolution. But thousands of years ago, understanding what evolution or the world coming to be look like for human beings was much more difficult without modern science. So just like multiple things in the Bible, we have to grow with it. We have to understand that this was the best understanding for humans at the time of how the world came to be, how people came to be made in the image of our Creator, how plants and animals came to be. There are plenty of things that weren't understood. But here's the bigger question, and I think one of my biggest questions about science and faith is, if you don't want to believe the evolutionary science and want to believe in the 7-day creation story, or if you want to believe in the evolutionary science and think what's in the Bible is completely inaccurate, does it change the way that you live out a faith? Does it change the way that you treat your neighbor? Does it change the way that you see God embodied in your life? I don't think it has to. Sometimes the way our brains work, science makes so much more sense. And sometimes God does. Albert Einstein said that science without religion is lame, and religion without science is unexamined. So I think we need to have both. What are some other places that you can think of that science and religion might butt up against each other? One of them I can think about starting off is modern medicine, especially when we talk about mental health. In some religious communities, there's a push that if you have enough faith, if you have God in your life enough, if you are in tune with the divine, that you won't need mental health help. That if you just pray more, you won't be depressed. Or if you go to church more often or serve more often, that you won't need to take antidepressants or anti-anxieties or anti-schizophrenia medication or need therapy for that matter. And this is absolutely one of these places where the butting up of science and medicine and faith can be harmful. Because here's the thing, is that you can have both, and you can have both beautifully entwined. You can have both beautifully intertwined, and sometimes, if one isn't meeting your needs, you can seek solace in the other. Here's an example. Say that you're dealing with a traumatic event, and you have tried praying and tried immersing yourself in the scripture and tried all of these things, and it just doesn't seem to be connecting for you. But you say, maybe I might need to go see a therapist. And that does work for you. Maybe a little bit even more than the prayer and the presence and faith community did. That's absolutely okay. That's absolutely fine. And it doesn't mean that the science of what that therapist was taught or the medications diminish your faith at all. We can have balance between understanding of science and understanding of faith. The big takeaway today that I want to bring to you, though, is that they can go together. There are beautiful things in which science opens our eyes to. An understanding of the cosmos, an understanding of our own bodies and how they work, an understanding of our brain, the environment around us. Science informs us of the way that we can take care of this beautiful creation in which we live. Science informs us of ways that we can help others. Science is the basis of research, which teaches us how the things that we do impact those around us. God also has a place in these things as well. God helps us to know how we should interact with our neighbor through the story of Jesus Christ. God helps us to know in which we feel and we seek the world around us in a deeper understanding. God helps us to connect with each other in possibly ways that science can't quite always explain. Both of these things, science, research, evolution, and creation, God's likeness, God's love, are compatible not only within us, but out in the world. I really think that quote from Einstein was right. Science without religion, or science without faith, is kind of lame. It takes away a little bit of the magic. But if we truly blindly take religion without encountering science, we're living an unexamined life. We're living a life in which we aren't taking advantage of the intellect, the brains that God has given us. And we're not taking advantage of learning from all of the rest of God's creation about the new and exciting things that science reveals. One of the amazing things about Scripture is it can be revealed to us in time. It's something that you can read it once and maybe understand it one way, but read it again and understand it somewhere different. It's kind of like this equation on the board. If you know what this equation equals, you should type it in the chat now. But the beautiful thing about this equation is that every time you look at it, it might puzzle you in a different way. But here's the secret. The answer to this equation is undefined, just like our faith. It's undefined because 0 is the denominator. That's why this equation is undefined. But our faith is undefined because it's ever expounding, ever expanding, and has room for our own interpretations and has room for the integration of science. And science isn't at the end of its rope either. There's still more to discover. So as you walk in this journey of faith, I would encourage you to know that science and faith are compatible in many ways. And that whether one thing is just hits you the right way versus something else, that's okay. If science makes more sense to you in one area or faith, go with it. But that neither one of those things makes your faith any stronger or weaker. It doesn't make the way that you live out your faith have to be any different. I would encourage you to see your faith as undefined, meaning it has places to go and places to grow, just as science does. Have a blessed day.